Welcome to the Limerick's Life podcast with your hosts, Sharon Slater
and Peter.
Hi all, and welcome to episode 6 of the Limerick's Life podcast. I'm Sharon, and I know about history.
I'm Peter, and I don't know about history. So what are you telling us about today?
Well, have you heard of Alice O'Day?
I have not.
Well, Alice once said of herself, "I have played everything, from Mansfield to movies, from Shakespeare to Shaw, from musical comedy to, well, anything you like." And this small autobiography was completely true.
Mm-hmm.
For 30 years, Alice O'Day showcased her skills as an actor in every medium available to her from the 1900s until the 1930s.
A pioneer, so?
Oh, absolutely. This was a revolutionary period in media with the advent of cinema and the radio, and Alice took them all on.
So who was Alice?
Alice came from a middle-class background. Her maternal grandfather was an architect.
Oh, do we know of any buildings he designed?
I have no idea. But that was his trade on his daughter's marriage certificate.
Oh.
Alice wasn't born O'Day,
Mm.
but Alice O'D in 1882.
Not a huge last name change.
Just enough.
D today.
Just a little bit of a variance. At the time of her birth, her father, Thomas O'D, was a shopkeeper in Kilfinnan, County Limerick.
Oh.
And she was born 12 years after her parents got married.
Oh.
So it was quite similar to our first episode, Monkey Business on Georgia Street.
It's a good episode.
Alice's mother, Anne O'Grady, the daughter of the architect.
Oh, yes.
She was originally the shopkeeper in Kilfinnan before her marriage.
Ah, and then the husband took over.
And the husband took over. She was also older than her husband, just like in our first episode.
There's a lot of parallels so far.
Alice grew up knowing strong, independent women, starting in her very own household.
We love strong, independent women in this podcast.
We really do. By 1899, Thomas had moved the family to Bruree, still in County Limerick, where he ran the Railway Hotel. He became popular within his community, and his community tried on multiple occasions to nominate him as a poor law guardian and to the county council for Bruree.
What's a poor law guardian?
Well, you have to think back to before the social welfare came into place.
Mm-hmm.
And a poor law guardian oversaw the workhouses and divvied out foods and goods to the poor.
Oh, an important job, so.
It was, and they needed people of merit, hopefully, to stay inside that role. The person who nominated him for the county council said that Thomas was, I'm going to quote, "a man of ability and intelligence who would worthily represent the ratepayers on the new council." And the thing was, it was a new council. The new council for County Limerick had just come into force.
Like that year?
Like about that year.
Wow.
But Alice's father, unlike his daughter, did not want the spotlight and declined the offer, saying he had no personal ambition to serve in the contest.
Oh, I respect him for not just chasing the most powerful job he could get.
He just wanted to run his hotel.
Yeah.
As a child in Bruree, one of Alice's contemporaries in the town was the future president of Ireland, Eamon de Valera.
Oh, Dev.
There was only about 4 months between the two of them, and Alice referred to de Valera as numbered among her childhood playmates.
It's an interesting way to regard him.
And the two of them, although they came from Bruree, would grow into adults whose lives couldn't be more different.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we know that de Valera grew into creating an anti-woman governmental system in Ireland that we're still feeling the repercussions of today.
Classic Dev.
Back to Alice. She worked in her family's hotel as a teenager, but her family was hit with trauma when her mother became extremely ill. And her mother suffered for about 4 years before she passed away in 1907.
Do we know what it was she had?
Yes, she had haemophilia and diabetes and died of, as they recorded on her death certificate, apoplexy, which today we would know as a stroke. With that, Alice was left in charge of the Bruree Hotel after her father retired back to Kilfinnan. She sold it in 1909.
Mm-hmm.
5 years later, her father also died.
Oh, so she was young enough, so with the two parents gone. Does she have any siblings?
Yeah, her elder sister Mary, who was living with the family in 1901, died soon after as well.
Jeez.
There was a lot of death for one family in a short amount of time. At the time of her father's death, Alice was the youngest by far of the 3 surviving children in the O'D family.
Mm-hmm.
Her sister Kate was 10 years older than her, and she had joined the Presentation Convent in Limerick in 1897.
So she became a nun.
It was very common for at least one member of an Irish family to become a religious in some way, so a priest or a nun.
Any of those.
She had another sibling, her brother Henry, known as Harry. He was 6 years older than Alice.
Mm-hmm.
By 1901, he was already treading the boards as an actor himself. With the Edward Compton Company. So he was out there.
Yeah.
He changed his name as well. We know, that Alice O'D changed her name to Alice O'Day. Henry O'D changed his name to Henry Dees.
Very creative of him.
Mm-hmm. He performed throughout Ireland and England in the early 1900s.
Was it a lucrative business at the time, acting?
It was. If you had skill and you stuck at it, you could get somewhere. The Sunday Independent of 1906 noted that Harry had achieved considerable success as an actor and was again chosen to play the young revolutionary David Rossi in Mr. Hall Caine's great play The Eternal City. The newspaper also noted that Harry was enjoying a holiday in County Limerick and was to give a recital in the Castle Hall, Kilmallock. So Alice would have seen this. She was still at the hotel when he had started his career, and it would have undoubtedly had some sort of an effect on her.
Yeah. So would she have gone to see him perform in Kilmallock at all?
Oh, yeah. When her brother was just around the corner, she absolutely would have gone to see. Probably would have got some of her friends.
Yeah.
Maybe not De Valera, but would have got some of her friends to go and see him perform locally.
I wonder if she got friends and family discounts there.
Alice attended primary school locally with Dev and then went to Cabaret Convent in Dublin for her secondary education. Then she made her debut on the professional stage with William Madison's Shakespearean Company, which was then one of the best schools for acting.
Oh, it's nice to see her starting with the best.
Yeah, she didn't just stick with them though. She became a member of the Irish Players and performed for several years in Ireland under her own name.
She didn't change it to some other variation of D again?
Not yet. She was still just OD at this stage. So in September 1907, she appeared in Hamlet in the Gaiety Theatre in Dublin. And that same month, she appeared as the third witch in Macbeth in the Theatre Royal in Belfast.
Well, so very popular productions.
Yeah, but at this stage, she was still only doing bit roles. It was still only small bits. She soon relocated to England, though, to further her career. And it was at this stage that she changed her name to Alice O'Day.
Oh, there we go.
In October 1909, she was back in Bruree, though, performing as Madge Thomas in Strife, a role that she was given in May that year after finishing a 2-year tour of English theatres.
Oh.
Her return to Limerick was important enough to be noted in the British magazine The Era, which described her performance as a stirring portrayal.
So she was an actor of note now.
Oh, absolutely. As soon as she started getting those bigger roles, she held on to them. An article in the Oxford Journal in 1910 said that she makes the best of a not convincing character of Mrs. Badger. So even when she was given bad stuff, she played it well. She often worked with George Bernard Shaw and was in his play Press Cuttings about conscription and socialism and suffragettes. Shaw was a long-standing supporter of female suffrage, and the play was intended to help raise funds for the Women's Suffrage Society. And it shows us too where Alice stood on the idea of suffrage.
I'm liking her more and more as we go on.
Yeah, feminism for the win.
Yeah.
In 1911, Alice was in the north of England performing The Drone. Local newspapers described her performance and gave her rave reviews. Despite this, Alice was not accommodated in high-class hotels while on tour. Instead, she had to find her own lodgings.
Really? Oh, that's just bad management right there.
In this case, she was housed with a widow woman and her 2 adult factory-working daughters in Blackburn, Lancashire.
How many holes are in Blackburn, Lancashire?
No, we're not going into the Beatles. Okay. Back to Alice. One of her longest running roles was that of Man and Superman in 1912, which she played for over 200 performances in the Queen's Theatre in London.
Okay, I know the Superman we're familiar with wasn't created until the 30s, so who was this man in Superman they're talking about? Was it set in Smallville?
Well, there was no Clark Kent or Lois Lane.
Oh.
This was another George Bernard Shaw play, and it was based on the Don Juan theme. And Alice's performance was described as, one of the best studies of the piece was Miss Ramsden of Miss Alice O'Dea. It was curt, snobby, snappy, straight-laced, uncharitable old spinster to the life.
Nice.
She was back in Ireland for a brief stint in 1912, performing this play at the Gaiety Theatre in Dublin. And the Irish Independent said of her, Miss Alice O'Dea, a Limerick lady, will play Miss Ramsden, in which, as in other plays, she has made a name for herself in the profession.
So she's gained pretty good acclaim locally and abroad.
Oh, for sure. This performance set her out as a force to be reckoned with. And she was soon on her way across the ocean to New York to make her debut there.
Oh, moving on up in the entertainment world.
Yeah, she didn't just stick in New York. She played other cities in the United States as well as in Canada.
Oh.
She returned to America again the following year. This time, her fame and prestige allowed her to stay in the Buckingham Hotel on Fifth Avenue, New York.
Just a small jump.
From a widow woman's house.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, there was a fall off in theatre productions between 1914 and 1918 due to the First World War.
Yeah. Do we know much about what she was doing at that time?
There isn't much information about this point in her life. The newspapers, unsurprisingly, were filled with war news instead of entertainment.
That's fair. Hopefully she had a lot of savings, though.
She had sold the hotel a few years earlier, so had that to back her. And her brother died in 1920 at the age of 46.
Another young death in the family.
He had inherited the family's land and he left this in his will to Alice.
Mm-hmm.
It was worth, in the will, about £400.
How much would that be today, roughly?
It would be about maybe 30,000.
Oh, so a good bit.
But it's really hard to calculate what money was worth 100 years ago compared to now, because the cost of labour and goods was
the
so different.
economy is just structured differently as well.
100 years ago, the average man's weekly wage was £5, and a pint was 5p. So £400 was a nice sum.
Yeah. With
Harry gone and her sister in a convent, Alice decided to sell this land and the family house in Kilfinnan.
Oh.
It wasn't sold for the £400 that the will said it was worth, but instead for £1,600.
Oh, wow. So that's like 120 grand?
Yeah, so it's 4 times more than it was valued at.
Jeez. Well, good for her.
Even after selling off the family land, she never lost touch with her home. In the 1921 census, she was visiting one of her friends from home in London. Her friend was a 43-year-old school teacher originally from Kilmallock, but had moved to London to teach geography.
Oh.
She stayed in touch with people that she knew.
Yeah.
Alice would return to Limerick City almost every summer to visit her sister Mary, now Sister Bernadine, in the Presentation Convent on Sexton Street.
I wonder if Sister Bernadine was bragging about her famous sister to all the pupils.
Oh, probably. In 1927, Alice made her first known film performance in the silent movie Motoring. In this film, a motorist helps a night's ward elope with her lover.
That is a plot right there.
After this, she appeared in a film almost annually until her death.
Every year. They're keeping busy, so.
And that's just the films.
Yeah.
She must have loved her job. We know some of the other film titles she had. You're going to enjoy these. 3 Men in a Cart.
Classic.
Partners, Please.
Iconic.
Call Me Mame.
Everyone knows it.
Little Miss Nobody.
It's a good one too.
The Angelus.
I haven't seen that one.
Sunset in Vienna.
Haven't seen that one.
Spare Room. Spare Room was a comedy in which she plays one of the leads. And The Phantom Light.
Oh, I like the Phantom Light name. It's a good name.
The last of those, The Phantom Light, was a 1935 film. And it's the only one that I've managed to find a copy of. You can watch it on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
Alice plays Mrs. Owens, a public house owner in a small coastal town in Wales. And she does the best face acting in it. So many eye rolls. There's this young woman who comes in and she's got no time for her whatsoever. We know for certain that this film was shown in the Grand Central Cinema on Bedford Row here in Limerick.
There was a cinema in Bedford Row?
There was 2 cinemas in Bedford Row.
2?
The Savoy, where the Deals now is, and the Grand Central, where the Sisters Green, or however you pronounce that in Swedish is.
Ah, I didn't know that.
The Grand Central, it was a former church. And
is that the one that has like the glass front?
That's the one.
Ah, I know the one.
I like that as well. Like how when they redid the site, they left the facade of the church in place. It's really cool to walk past.
It's historic and modern at the same time.
Most of her other films were probably shown locally as well, but it was hard to find them advertised in the newspapers, as many of the cinemas had notice boards outside, which told of upcoming movies. So, on another sidetrack of her life, outside of her career, in 1923, Alice performed with Sybil Jane in Wimbledon Theatre. Sybil had only that year graduated from RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. Sybil was born Sybil Julia Beatrix Burlington in Madras, India in 1888, where her father had worked as an engineer in the public works.
I love this podcast because we get to find the coolest names that I've ever heard. Sybil Julia Beatrice Burlton sounds like a Wes Anderson character.
Yeah, she had a very Wes Anderson kind of job too. She was considered a fashion authority throughout her life and was often hired as a commentator on fashion shows.
So she was like an influencer. She'd like Instagram, TikTok and all that now.
Absolutely. As a young woman, she married a historian, Lionel Cecil Jane, and quickly had a son, Julian Jane, in 1916. What do you think of Julian Jane?
Julian Jane's that's more of a Marvel character.
Julian was born during the First World War when, again, the entire world was in a state of flux.
To put it mildly.
Soon after their marriage, Sybil, while still pregnant, moved back in with her parents. The couple didn't last very long and legally separated in 1919. And interestingly enough, we actually know what happened.
Oh?
Yes. Sybil called on her husband one day and was astonished to find him repulsed by her when she approached him to kiss him. He locked the door, then confronted her with the announcement that he would no longer live with her as their marriage was an absolute failure.
Oh my.
He went on to say that he never loved her and tried to tell her, but had not the courage, and she hadn't given him the chance.
Oh my God.
So he managed to get her pregnant, but he never found a moment in between to say...
It just never came up. What can you say?
Soon afterwards, he ran off to Wales, and Sybil was granted a divorce. Her son remained with her.
Do we know what happened to the husband?
He died very young, and so we don't really know his side of the story.
Yeah.
But let's go back to Alice. When Alice met Sybil in the early 1920s, they hit it off immediately and quickly moved in together despite a 6-year gap. Not only did they live together, they often worked and travelled together. it is clear they spent a substantial amount of time in each other's company.
Sounds like they were very good, quote, friends.
Yes, very good friends. A wink, wink. They were members of the MacDonagh Players, who in 1925 travelled to South Africa to perform a group of George Bernard Shaw plays. In 1930, they performed in Brain, a play in 3 parts, presented by the Masses Stage and Film Guild. The following year, they were in Spring Awakening, the Sunday Theatre Club in London. Like Alice, Sybil also starred on the stage and then moved into the movies. She was often on set teaching elocution and accents for new talkies. Sybil's most famous role was as Mrs. Barrymore in the 1931 version of The Hound of the Baskervilles.
Ooh, I didn't know there was a 1931 version. I love Sherlock Holmes, so I'm going to have to try and track that one down.
According to the electoral registers, they were living together as sole adults in their home in Paddington, London, in the late 1920s and early 1930s.
What about her son?
Sybil's son became a motor car racer.
Oh.
And in 1939, he shared the same house that Alice and Sybil had lived together in. So it's very probable that he lived with the couple when they were not on tour. Otherwise, he was living with Sybil's parents. Throughout the 1930s, Alice continued to perform in every outlet available to her. In 1932, she was back in Ireland, playing Pay the Piper in Belfast. Her voice was constantly heard by those who could receive BBC radio. We know from a project in Ormston House called The Pirate that radios were very popular in Limerick in the 1930s, even if the stations were not always legal.
Ooh, pirate radio.
You can check out that podcast on their website. Her radio appearances on the BBC included the audio plays The Wrong Bouquet in 1935, My Lady Frail in 1936, Old English in 1937, and she often did voiceover work for the BBC. So she was doing these plays, and she was in these movies, and she was on the radio.
It's a very, very busy woman.
She was. In December 1937, Alice was performing on stage in a comedy in Southsea.
Southsea?
It's a town in Portsmouth, southwest of London.
Oh, I see.
The audience was completely unaware at the time that Alice was performing while suffering from pneumonia.
Oh, no.
She was feeling unwell, so took a little bit of time off to recover on the 4th of December, and 3 days later, she died.
Oh, so she was in her 50s?
Yes, she was. And the Era magazine, you know, the one that introduced her all those years before, it spoke of her. It had a biography on the 23rd of December, 1937, and it said of her life, "But Alice O'Day was more than an actress. She touched life at many points and brought to every activity an enthusiastic interest and warmth of sympathy, which made her a most lovable companion. She has a passion for travelling, for country life, for gardening. Her love of life was all-embracing. Nothing human was alien to her, and her shrewd, critical sense was set off by an unfailing gusto for adventure, whether physical or mental."
Oh, that was sweet. I like that.
Yeah, the thing was, she died so suddenly, she didn't leave a will.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So her personal effects came to about £8,000.
Yeah.
And were awarded to a public trustee who decided who was going to receive the effects. She had a sister who was a nun. Her brother died without any children. So there wasn't really someone for them to go to.
There was no one obvious for it, yeah.
I haven't been able to discover if any of the portion of these went to Sybil. Unfortunately, we have to wait another few years before we know for sure how these two women described their relationship. In 2032, the 1931 census will be released. A census taken when Alice and Jane were living together. Until then, we can only make up our own conjecture.
I'll have to put that in my calendar.
The thing is, though, I presume everyone is gay until they tell me otherwise. And as of yet, Alice hasn't told me otherwise. Although the press confirms my suspicion, as anyone who knows how to read obituaries, old obituaries, knows the terms. A confirmed bachelor is generally a gay man. That the Era magazine ended the obituary for Alice O'Day with, "She died peacefully in the home of her friend, Miss Sybil Jane, with whom she lived for the last 16 years of her life." Now that doesn't really leave much doubt, does it?
Yeah, no. You don't need to leave too much for the imagination there. So, where can people go and visit her?
She's buried in St. Mary's Catholic Cemetery in Kensal Green in London.
Mm-hmm.
Sybil paid for the grave.
Did Sybil live much longer?
Sybil outlived her for about 30 years.
Significantly longer, so.
A few years ago, I contacted the caretakers for the cemetery that Alice is buried in, and I arranged to have her name added to the persons of note list for the cemetery. So she's going to be remembered by all of those who visit there and have a look at the people of note for St. Mary's Catholic Cemetery in Kensal Green, London.
Oh, that's nice. I like that.
So do you have any other questions?
I do not. Let's go watch The Phantom Light.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Find out more about this and other Limerick stories at limerickslife.com and check us out on our social media. You can find Limerick's Life on buymeacoffee.com. Mine's a decaf.
And mine's a latte.